Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Black Mirror Season 7. In this video, I will give my review on each episode of Season 7 of Black Mirror. So this was a patron-requested video, requested by patron Ricky. So I'll have to start with the spoiler warning for Black Mirror, however, Season 7. However, I will say that if you've only seen a couple episodes, you are safe to watch my segment on each episode, the episode that you've seen. So in other words, I won't be giving away spoilers for other episodes when I'm talking about a particular episode. I'm only giving away spoilers for the episode that I am talking about, so you should have seen that episode. But yeah, I'll have a links, timestamps in the description below, and it also should appear on screen so that you can scroll if you've only seen certain episodes and only watched the certain episodes that you have seen. So I wasn't aware that Black Mirror Season 7 was coming out like right this month. I remember hearing about it a while ago, like, oh, you know, Black Mirror Season 7 is going to come out sometime in 2025, and I heard that they were making a sequel to the USS Calister, but that's pretty much all I knew, and I had no idea it was coming out. And then Ricky, patron supporter, friend of the channel, messaged me on the Thursday the day it was released and said, hey, Black Mirror Season 7 is out. Are you going to review it? And I didn't know it was going to be out, so I wasn't planning on reviewing it. So I told Ricky, I'm not sure if I'm going to review it or not. So then Ricky made the official request as a patron supporter that I do review it. So here I am to review it. So I will say that I believe that Black Mirror has been in a bit of a slump since Season 4, which I can't remember the exact year it came out, but I was still living in New Zealand, so it must have been like 2018 or 2019. So a while ago. And because with Season 5 I thought was mediocre, and Season 6 was my least favorite season of the show so far. So in other words, my sort of anticipation of Season 7 was not very high. I was kind of thinking, yeah, Black Mirror has been kind of going downhill. Like Season 6 in particular, I mean, yes, it was my least favorite season of the show, but that doesn't mean I thought the whole thing sucked. There were some episodes I liked, some I thought were okay. I just didn't think it lived up to the high standard of that Black Mirror usually sets. But more than that, I think it got away from the classic Black Mirror feel. Now, I'm perfectly fine with shows trying new things and going in different directions, but it had been so many years since we had Black Mirror. I'm kind of wanting that feel. That doesn't mean they can't do something new and different, but I would still like that sort of feel of what Black Mirror is known for, having these dark, ironic episodes about like technology and how fucked up it is. And Season 6 had 5 episodes, 4 of which were horror thriller. 2 of those 4 were flat out horror, supernatural horror, which Black Mirror usually doesn't do. And that's not really what I'm into. That's not really why I watch Black Mirror. Now, granted, one of those episodes I'm classifying as horror thriller was typical Black Mirror, because they do thriller episodes time to time. But I think just that combined with the whole season, like being so horror bent, wasn't my favorite. And probably one of the, and so I was worried that that's the direction the show was going in now, that Season 7 would be the same thing and do the same thing. So I wasn't really highly anticipating it, which is why I wasn't sure whether or not I would review it. But I watched it, and it's my favorite season of Black Mirror. I think this is the best season, and I don't think it's too early for me to say this. In my opinion, this is the best season of Black Mirror because it is the first season of Black Mirror ever that I loved every single episode. Previous seasons, even my favorite season, which before this was season 4, even in season 4, there's a couple episodes I think are mediocre. None I think outright suck. Other seasons have episodes I think outright suck. Like I wasn't a fan of the Shut Up and Dance in season 3, or don't even get me started on the pig fucking episode in season 1. But yeah, this was the first season where, to one degree or another, I thought every episode was great. Now, that's not to say I thought every episode was awesome, but I thought 4 out of 6 of them were awesome, and the other 2 were great. So, yeah, that is much, much, much higher praise than I've had given any season of Black Mirror. But more than that, getting back to my point about how season 6 kind of strayed from what the show was about, it got back to the classic Black Mirror feel. It got back to the high quality episodes that I'm used to in Black Mirror. It got back to having analogies and exploring technology and stuff that this show does best. And it does it, and even though it's getting back to the core, it's still new and original. It's still different than any, like, this particular stories are still different. It's not like repeating the same thing again. But it's just getting back to its core values. So it's getting back to that sort of dark, kind of ironic, spin on technology feel that earlier seasons had with episodes like White Christmas. It's also getting back to that very thoughtful, emotional drama that season 3 had with episodes like San Junipero, and it's getting back to the sort of more experimental, weird shit with technology that they did in episodes like USS Calister and Bandersnatch. And so, to me, it's like essential Black Mirror, but at its best. It doesn't have any of the mediocre stuff or the bad stuff that bothered me in the past. It was just like every episode was on point. So yeah, I'm very glad that I watched this season. I'm very surprised that they got back to doing such a great season after being in a slump for the past 5 years. Also, I made the decision, since I had no idea the season's coming out and then all of a sudden it was out, I made the decision not to watch any trailers or any promotional material or read any synopses or even look at any pictures. So I went in to not knowing anything about the season whatsoever, not knowing what the episodes were going to be, what it was going to be about. I went in blind, wanted to completely have a unique experience, and the only thing I vaguely remembered hearing about a while ago was that they were doing a USS Calister sequel. That's the only thing I knew. Other than that, I had no idea coming into the season. I think that actually did help me, because I'm listening to some other people and they seem to have certain expectations about what they wanted the episode to be. So I think it was actually helpful, the fact that I knew absolutely nothing about the season coming into it. But anyway, now I'm going to get into, let me get into each individual episode. We'll start with episode 1, Common People. So this was that depressing episode I was talking about. Definitely very sad. Now, it's funny because like season 6, season 1 started with an episode that sort of had commentary on like Netflix and the whole subscriber thing. Like they don't give, like Black Mirror, Charlie Rooker, like he knows this show is popular, Netflix isn't going to cancel him, so he doesn't give a fuck. He just outright like he criticizes them, which I do really appreciate. But this is much better than Joan is Awful, which I didn't think that episode was terrible. It wasn't awful, but it wasn't like amazing. It wasn't really good because it was a bit too silly, and I know that's what they were going for as a comedy. But this episode, more than just commenting on the whole, how streaming services constantly move the goalposts and try to screw you over and increase the cost or put ads on without knowing and saying, oh, well, and they try to bill it as if it's a great thing. Oh, we have this great, even better tier that costs way more money, and we're going to make the tier you have much worse, but isn't that great? But it's also a really strong commentary on the medical U.S. medical situation, how that's very sort of not friendly, and people can't afford it, and they go broke on it, trying to keep their loved ones alive, and having to resort to things like the dumb dummies, whatever. And I will say a couple things about this episode. When it began with a happy couple having a great time, I'm like, yeah, I've seen Black Mirror enough to know that things are going to get really terrible for them. And the other thing is when they had that one guy from work who was watching the Dumb Dummies, I'm like, this is going to come up. Like, the main character is going to end up doing the Dumb Dummies because there's no reason to show the Dumb Dummies otherwise. Like, there's a reason why they're showing this. Is because the main character is going to resort to having to do that. But, I mean, there's a few, like, plot mechanisms in this episode I thought that were a little clunky or unrealistic. It just happened too fast. Like, the salesperson is, like, immediately like, oh, we're doing this blah, 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 blah thing. And there wasn't sort of more, like, checks and balances on that. But I suppose this is, like, depicting a darker future where there's less sort of checks and balances on it. But it does kind of, I'm willing to go with those the playing fast and loose with reality, because it's more metaphorical, and it's a really good metaphor that rightfully points out commentary on how fucked up the U.S. healthcare system is. And so it was very powerful in that regard. It was very depressing, though, and yeah, that ending. I don't think I was in the right headspace this week to watch that episode. I kind of forgot, like, no, this is Black Mirror. Like, you should have expected this. And I was like, oh, I hope all the episodes aren't gonna be like this, and they weren't, which is a good thing. But yeah, it was a really really powerful episode. Now I do wonder, like, at the end, the one thing I was unsure of with this ending was when the husband, after he kills the wife at her wishes, he goes off to do the Dumb Dummies thing, and it kind of cuts the credit. So I think it's assumed, like, from what I've seen in other reviews, that he's going to kill himself. That's the impression I got. However, I've heard different theories on exactly, like, someone threw out the theory that he was going to, like, expose it wasn't Riverdale, it was River something, the company that was doing it, that he was going to expose them publicly. I didn't get that impression at all. Here's the impression I got. That because when he gave her that card for like 30 minutes of the the super higher tier or whatever, she was like, how could you afford this? Did you have to do like a tooth thing? And he's like, no, I didn't do anything like that. Don't worry about it. It was a dummies thing, but it was an exclusive like offer, so don't worry about it. So my impression is someone paid him that he offered to like live stream his suicide, and someone's paying him to do that exclusively. That is my impression. That's how he got the money, because he agreed in advance, because he knew he would want to kill himself after she died. But yeah, that's what I got of it. But yeah, it's very dark, very depressing, but also very powerful commentary. So my rating on Common People out of 10 is going to be a 9. Excellent. Alright, so next, getting to the next episode, Bete Noire, or however you pronounce that. I get the impression from what I'm hearing so far from people that people don't like this episode as much. I do. I really like this episode. It did have a little bit of that horror, kind of tongue-in-cheek kind of horrorness that episodes like Demon 79 had. No, not in the same way, but it did have a little bit of that horror feel, but not like too much in a way that and it wasn't like, even though it was a bit tongue-in-cheek, it wasn't like too over the top like something like Joan is Awful. It had like, to me it had sort of the perfect blend of and I get really invested that, because I could feel like the main character's frustration on how she was being gaslit repeatedly over and over again, and being told that things didn't exist that really did exist, and how it was getting worse. And it was very obvious that God, I couldn't remember the characters' names. Verity, yeah, the Verity was out to get Maria. That she definitely held the taunting that they did as children against her, and was out to get her. Like, that became pretty obvious fairly early on. So it was a little bit frustrating, like watching Verity sort of always have the upper hand and play her hand, which is why I love the ending so much. And one thing I want to make clear is, because I talked about in a certain episode in season 6 how I didn't like the ending, and if they ended it better, I would have liked the episode better, and because of that, I didn't like that episode. Whereas this, they ended it correctly. Like, had they ended it where Verity did get the better of Maria, then I would have been frustrated with the episode, and I wouldn't have liked it. And that's not to say, like, as I said, the previous episode is super depressing ending. Like, the good guys don't always have to end, but it just depends on the story. For me, there's certain stories that I can't like unless the good guy, or the main character, I don't know if you call her the good guy, that's subjective, but the main character, unless they get the upgrade, because for me it would have just been way too frustrating to see Verity constantly like gaslight her and get away with it, control everything, and then win. That would just, to me, that would just be one note and boring. It's way more interesting that Maria did get the better of her. And I thought that, and some people think that ending was too much when she becomes the Empress of the Universe and everyone's bowing behind her, but I thought that was fucking perfect. I thought that was genius. It was tongue-in-cheek, but in like the best way possible. Now, I've heard some nitpicks about it. So I heard a nitpick that, well, if Verity makes the magical amulet or whatever, she makes it like keyed to her DNA, why didn't she make it keyed to her voice as well, where Maria is able to activate it by having Verity touch it and she speaks. But my response to that nitpick is, who cares? But here, actually, no, I do have an actual counter to that, which is, I think Verity was kind of overconfident. And she was kind of stuck in her ways, and I don't, because that's like a second backup, like she already has the DNA thing. I don't think she thinks she needs to have that second backup also being voice operated. I do think she was a bit up herself and overconfidence because she was basically manipulating the entire universe and getting away with it, and that breeds overconfidence. So I totally buy that that's the case. My complaint would, and the thing that kind of made me go, was the fact that Maria was able to snatch the gun from the police officer and kill Verity so quick without the police being able to stop her, because she's not an expert. I don't believe they ever mentioned in this episode that she's even operated a gun before, that she would be able to snatch from the police. Now, granted, the police were kind of caught off guard or whatever, but still. And that she was, I mean, and Verity was very close range, but still, that happened. That was like a very swift, very fast move where she turned around and went like that. Kind of don't buy that she'd be able to pull that off. But I am willing to go with it and don't particularly care because it's such a good ending. Because I love that. I love that she got the better of her. To me, it justified all that frustration that I was feeling. It was like a nice release of all the frustration I was feeling throughout the episode, where, I felt bad for Maria being completely gaslit like that. And then it got completely over the top ridiculous when they were like, nut eulogy? What the hell's a nut eulogy? That's when you knew that there was some supernatural shit going on. But yeah, so my rating for Bete Noire is a out of 10 is going to be a 9. Excellent. All right, so move on to the next episode, which is Hotel Reverie. This was a very interesting episode. Again, this is the sort of more dramatic, like, love story. And I wasn't sure where they were going with this at first, with, recreating a classic film by actually putting the actor in. But I ended up loving this episode a lot. Because I thought it was an amazing character story. I really got invested. I think they really, teased the actress who was in the classic film and how she had a tragic death, and Brandy, the modern day actress who was studying her, how she was getting involved with that and knew a lot about the film. And I didn't, I don't know, I feel like some people might find it tedious that they were going through the film scene by scene at first until things went off the rail. I didn't. I thought that was very interesting, and this ended up being one of the longer episodes of the season. And I think it needed to be. I think it was very well earned. And it had a little bit of humor thrown in there too, with all the tech people. They were definitely acting like dumb or whatever. And I did find it a little bit hard to believe that they only had 2 hours to do it and were rushing it. It did seem like... And the fact that they would put the actress's life in danger without even warning them. You know what this felt like to me? If I'm being honest, it felt like being a Star Trek fan, it felt like a Trapped in a Holodeck episode. But especially how, we got to finish the program in order to get her out. They've done that in Star Trek Holodeck episodes so many times. We got to see the program through in order to get out. But, I like this much better, though. Because the holodeck thing, it became a cliche, and they pulled that same trick over and over again. But my complaint's similar with the holodeck. My complaint was that, how they have safeties malfunctioning, which doesn't make any sense. It's supposed to be an entertainment machine. Why is it putting people's lives at risk? And that's kind of my complaint here, is like they're trying to make a movie and they hire an actress to do it, yet they put her life in danger by doing it, because something goes wrong, and it seems like they were very careless. But anyway, maybe some companies would be. We do know instances in movie making where people have died because the production company was careless. So I know some people might argue that it's not too far off base, but I don't know. I don't know. It didn't seem 100% believable to me. But that being said, that didn't really bother me that much, though, because I think the main thrust of the romance between Brandy and I can't remember the name of the older actress, but anyway, Dorothy was the actress's name. I can't remember. The character was Claire or something, I believe. But anyway, the romance between them was very powerful, and it was very interesting seeing a modern day person insert themselves into a 1920s or 1940s, I think it's 1940s actually, a 1940s film, and I think the actress who portrayed Dorothy did a really good job of portraying that sort of 40s dame actress feel, the whole way she speaks and moves. I bet that she actually did watch a lot of these classic films in preparation for this role. And the way that they sold the whole film and made it feel like one of those classic films was also incredibly impressive. But it was interesting adding in that extra element of having a modern person sort of interact in that environment. Especially when Brandy started going off script. That's when it got really interesting, where she became real. And then you had the moment where they got stuck in there, and time was moving super fast for them, and they spent months together building a romance, and then having it so... And Kimmy, not being aware that she's okay, we're going to reset this, and how she's ripping away someone that Brandy loves and resetting it so that she doesn't remember her at all, and the effect that had on her to the point where she was considering not leaving at all, but Kimmy was trying to be you will die if you don't leave. That was very powerful, very convincing stuff, and the ending was very tragic, was very sad, especially knowing that Brandy, the love that she had for this person, and but then when she got out and they had that coda where she received the little headset where she could call her on the telephone, that was really beautiful. That was really lovely. Overall, I thought this was a really great episode. Despite my complaints about holodecks or whatever, I think it still was amazing. So my rating for a Hotel Reverie out of 10 is a 10, the best. Alright, so then we get into the next episode, which is Plaything. And I'm still not entirely sure what other people think of this episode. I have a feeling some people might be mixed or not like it very much, or think it's kind of boring. I fucking love this episode. There's a couple episodes that I watched twice already. In fact, I love the season so much, I plan on watching pretty much every episode twice. But I've already watched this one twice because this episode is so good, and I pick up more things on the second viewing. Now, this was a kind of indirect sequel to Bandersnatch. We will get this is the first season of Black Mirror that really did sequels to other episodes. We get an indirect sequel in this episode, and of course later we get a direct sequel with the USS Calister. But yeah, so it had like the same characters who what's his face, Rickman, played by the same actor, Will Porter, who, and I love that character from Bandersnatch so much. So good. But I guess because they talk about how he he went crazy or an incident. I don't know if they're referring to Bandersnatch because there's several different scenarios in Bandersnatch, even including some where he died. But I think that it was my theory that the one ending of Bandersnatch that actually had the credits, that was the real ending. That's actually what happened in real life, and all those other possibilities were just imagining inside of Stefan's head. But that's just my thing. So, but whatever reason, they're choosing the reality with he's still alive, which makes sense. But yeah, I just love the way this character talks. Like that scene where the main character goes to visit him, and he's like, "Oh, you have a game for me. Or you got a movie for me. You have a game for me." And he's like, "No, I don't. I don't have a game. This is not a game. I passed it off as a game in order to get in so that they would bankroll it. Otherwise, they wouldn't bankroll it. So I made it look like a game, but it's not actually a game." And how he went on about how they're actually alive, and you sort of nurture them and care for them, and that they're like digital life forms. Yeah, just the way he was talking, I just love the way this character talks. Like he's so like the way he sprouts out information. Missed that from Bandersnatch, and I thought it was really interesting here. Also, I've already heard people draw parallels between the way Rickman interacted with Cameron in this episode, and then Stefan and Bandersnatch, how he has a sort of similar sort of way of kind of manipulating them, and but I think he could tell from his writings, from Cameron's writings, that he would be amenable to this sort of thing, and I think that's why he specifically chose him. So I heard some theories that, or some people state that in this episode, Rickman changes his mind about the release of the Thronglets and purposely destroys it to try to get rid of it. But little did he know, Cameron stole the disc and it lived on because he realized they were too dangerous. Which I think that clearly is not the case. I think it's very clear that what Cameron said about how Rickman actually wanted him to take it was true. That was the reason why he called the meeting. That's why he was like, "Oh, I gotta go take my pills. I'm just gonna leave you alone in the office with the game. Don't take it." And I think it was very obvious that he was wanting Cameron to take it. And that was the whole point of calling him in. And that once he did take it, Rickman didn't want the game to be in wide release, because he realized that it wouldn't be treated as a game proper, and of course he wouldn't want anybody using it, because then they might do what that lump guy did and just torture them and kill them, because he knows that they're actual beings. So he wanted to put it in the hands of someone he knew would do the right thing to it, and so he purposely chose Cameron to be that person, and he was correct in doing so. So I think that's very clear. Although I think the video I watched has stated that might have been AI generated, but anyway, ironically. But anyway, so yeah, the Thronglets were kind of cute, of course, and I think the episode was really impressive that you did, at least I did, feel like discussed it when that what's his face dude started going around killing them, and I was like, oh my god, he's killing these beings. And like, you gotta admit that we've all played video games where we purposely like cause death and destruction just for the hell of it, because it's just a game. Like, I've done that with SimCity, where you could choose disasters and have Godzilla show up and start stomping on everything. Like, but it's, you know, it's just a video game, so I get that that's what Lump was seeing it as, but not aware that they were, because we have the knowledge that they are like living digital beings, that it did come off as murderous. And I love the way this whole thing was shot, like particularly this scene where Cameron finds Lump destroying them and how he starts going mad and like the camera shakes or whatever to sort of emphasize his rage. Like, I love that. I thought that was like done extremely well. And also the scenes when he's taking acid and talking to the throng, and how the way it's shot as like backlit, like it's really amazing cinematography that I absolutely love. Now, I've heard again another complaint about this episode is like, how did he throughout the years, how did Cameron afford, you know, to live in this apartment and afford to buy all these, you know, all the computer parts and all these different systems, which were quite expensive, in order to keep them, because it seemed like he spent all of his time caring for the throng. So how could he afford all this? I think it's clear that he did have a job at one stage. It's just not something, it's not relevant to the story. So the story's not going to, you know, waste time saying and have him go, oh, well, this is how I earned my money. Like, you just assume that that's the case. That maybe it was a remote job. It was definitely having something to do with computers. Maybe he helped Verity. No, probably not. But yeah, so the scene at the end with, you know, when they had the confrontation with the cop, and he, like, this is something I noticed when I went back and watched the episode again, that from the very beginning he's constantly being like, give me a pen, give me a pen, give me a pen. and there's a line that I, you know, kind of forgot about until I watched it again at the start, where the cop who arrested him was like, oh, he kept trying to show me this drawing, and I wouldn't let him do it, and he got agitated. And so it appears to me he was trying to do the, you know, the barcode thing at the start, but wasn't able to do it. So the whole point of telling the story was trying to convince him to give him a paper, and once he did, like, that was the end of it. And I heard, like, the opinion that the psychologist there kind of fucked up by letting him have it, and I definitely see that point of view. Also, again, this is an AI generated video. I think I watched. They incorrectly said that the throngs killed all of humanity. That's clearly not what they did. They were very clear on that they were merging with humanity. And apparently I heard that Charlie Brooker said about this episode that it's up to the individual audience whether or not they think that's a good or bad thing. But I'm still like, yeah, I'm still up in the air about that, but to me that's not really important. What's important is that when the scene, like when all the phones started making that noise and the high-pitched noise and everything took over, like, that was fucking intense. Like, that was so unexpected. And again, this is the ending that totally, like, you know, willing to go out there. And it's not very many of Black Mirror episodes that, like, will depict, like, such a massive, like, change or end of the world. And I fucking loved it. And I heard, like, there apparently is a theory out there that this is all in Cameron's head, and he was, like, tripping the whole time, which I think is total horseshit. That's absolutely, clearly not what's going on. Clearly, the throngs did take over the world, and I fucking love it. It was so good. And I love like the music that comes in the credits is like for all these episodes. In fact, like I'm watching it on Netflix on the TV, and like it instantly changes the episode like as soon as the credits starts, which pissed me off because I need to sit with these episodes. Like I want to hear the music, I want to see the credits, and I had to like go back and try to like find like something. I don't know. The TV I was watching on made it hard for me to actually watch the credits. It would constantly just switch fucking Netflix. Speaking of the credits, though, after I did watch the credits for this episode, I noticed that there was a QR code in the credits. It was listed right after the cast list. So eventually, I got out my phone and scanned it, and I expected it to be like a link to an actor's page or something because it was part of the cast list, but it wasn't. It was a link took you to the App Store to download the Thronglets video game app. So I did it. I downloaded the app and I started playing it, and it was really freaky after seeing that episode because the game is pretty much exactly how it appears in the episode, that there's a little thronglets, you try to take care of them, feed them, give them a bath and stuff, and they multiply if they do it. And then like one of them died because I didn't feed him enough, and I felt like so terrible because I was like, these things are really alive. And also I think like I had this like element of like freakiness because I was like, they're gonna take over the world, they're gonna use my phone to send me a signal and take over my body. Obviously not, it's just a game, but still it's like freaky after having seen this episode. I don't know how anyone can play that game, but it is the game like in the episode is very similar to like The Sims or like the little digital pet that was going around in the late 90s, early 2000s, kind of along those lines. But taking it further to the point where they actually are alive. And as I said, it makes it hard for me to play, even though I know it's just a game. It's after watching this episode, I was like, oh, part of me is like, they're alive. Oh my God. It like feels so much worse when one of them died. But anyway. Anyway. My rating for Plaything out of 10 is a 10. The best. Alright, so we'll get into the next episode, which is Eulogy. And I guess the thing about Eulogy is that when I first started watching it, because I've, loved the first 4 episodes in the season so far, so I was like, okay, so this is kind of boring. This might be the episode that's finally not good. This might be the one sort of, mediocre episode of the season because it's just going to be about this grumpy old dude looking at photographs in his home, being all grumpy and grouchy, blah, blah, blah. But as it turns out, this is one of my favorite episodes of the entire show. In fact, I was considering calling it my favorite episode of the entire show, but then I remembered Bandersnatch, and I was like, okay, maybe Bandersnatch is slightly better, but this would be number 2 of the entire show. Because here's the thing, I've never cried so hard in like 9 years. I think the last time I cried so hard was when I saw the movie Room back in 2016, and I kind of needed this, and I was like, bawling my eyes out for like 15 minutes straight. Like, again, when the credits came on, I had to go back and watch them, and I couldn't like watch the next episode. I couldn't go into the next episode because I was crying too much. And even when after 15 minutes, I eventually started the USS Calister episode, and I still couldn't pay attention. Still had teary eyes, and and I think part of it might be it sort of spoke to me personally. is very similar, in that regard to the history of you or whatever from season 1. But this one, I think, was definitely a lot more powerful. And the Paul Giamatti, like, his performance in this episode is absolutely amazing. And again, something I mentioned before, I love sort of simplistic stories and we do get some, funky technology with them going inside the photographs and stuff like that. But for the most part, this episode is just Paul Giamatti sitting at home talking to this, the guide, the digital version of Carol's daughter. And most of it's just the two of them talking and him trying to remember it. And yeah, as I said, at first I thought that would be boring, but it impresses me more when an episode or a movie can just have something simplistic with just two people talking and yet be riveting. It impresses me that when they manage to make something like that riveting. And I will say, had this been a movie, I would call it one of my favorite movies of all time. Yeah, which is why it's up there for my favorite episode of the entire show. It was so emotionally powerful, especially when they really started getting into his regrets and what happened in the past. And it gets into really strong themes about people who you used to love that aren't in your life anymore. And especially, in your youth, a long time ago, that you lost track with. And the powerful feelings and emotions around that. And also how he had a lot of anger towards her, and going through this process, he realized that it's, he wasn't the innocent victim, that he had some fault in it as well, and it was a two-way street, and him coming to the realization. And I think the gimmick of the fact that he couldn't see her face throughout most of the episode was really powerful, and especially that ending where it had, I'm trying not to cry right now, but the ending where it had her playing the cello and he finally saw her face, and at the same time the intercut with him going to her funeral and having the daughter play the cello was so beautiful. This is what sent me in absolute tears. Like, I've never sobbed so hard, as I said, in like 9 years. Because it was so relatable, and it was so human, and it was absolutely beautiful. And especially the revelation of him reading that letter to realize that there was a letter there. And so in her mind, he's the one that abandoned her. In his mind, she's the one that abandoned him. And it was a simple miscommunication. Like, that there's such a strong tragedy to that, but at the same time, you see that this character had it was sort of like a sense of closure for him. And he seemed to be very sort of accepting of that, especially when he showed up at the funeral to celebrate her life. Also, the storyline about him not being able to see her face, not being able to remember her face, but at the end, he's able to. I think that's achieved because he's sort of come to terms with their past relationship. I think part of why he couldn't remember exactly what she looked like was because he still held kind of resentment, and part of him didn't want to remember because it was too painful. But after sort of reading the letter and because it happened like right after he read the letter, he put on the music and he said, okay, let's see her. I think that's when he was fully at peace and sort of fully came to the decision that he wanted to see her face. And so, yeah, that was beautiful. Yeah, simply an amazing character story. Now, I was going online again looking at some reviews, and I saw one on IMDb that said that, this is, totally off because Paul, this character's clearly in his 60s, so if in this flashbacks are supposed to be the early 90s, so he should have been in his 30s. And that, to be fair, that comment had, because you can put whether it's helpful or unhelpful, and it had, 35 unhelpful and 1 helpful. Because I think people were noticing the same thing I did, is a fucking duh, this is set in the future. Obviously, it's got this, futuristic technology. So I tried to do the math in my head. So, this character, assuming that the character was 20 years old in 1991, because I had these flashbacks in 91, and he looks like he's in his 20s. So let's say he's 20 years old. That means he was born in 71. So if we assume that this is taking place in, let's say, 2031, which is only 6 years from now, I would actually pitch it forward, but that's and just for the sake of rounding up. Let's say it's taking place in 2031. That means he would be 60 years old. And I looked it up just for curiosity's sake, and the actor, Paul Giamatti, is 63 years old. So, I would actually pitch it further than 2031. I would say, let's say it was 2041, in which case the character would be 70 years old, which is a bit older than what Giamatti is, but Giamatti could always just be playing older. In fact, that's what I thought. For me, I didn't think he was too old to be that age in the 90s. I thought he was too young to be that age in the 90s, because I was assuming this was pitched further in the future, like 2045 or something. And I was thinking, wow, this character's older than I am. So it seemed like this character should have been in his 80s. But maybe, again, the 80s would have been, that's like 2051. So maybe, so I think that was overstating how much they're pitching it in the future. But I think to me, it would make the most sense to say that it's set between 2031 and 2041, so that he would be in his 60s, somewhere in his 60s. I think that makes the most sense. And also, that's between 6 and 16 years from now. So that would allow enough time for this. I don't know. I just don't think 6 years is enough. I would do at least 10, but could be. I think it's in that range. Anyway, I'm off on a tangent now. My rating for Eulogy out of 10, of course, is a 10. The best. Absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful episode. It's hard to even talk about it without crying in tears. It was so acted so well. The music was amazing. It's just such I think it might be Paul Giamatti's best performance, and that's saying a lot. He's a really good actor. But anyway, let's now get into the finale, if you can even call it that. But the episode they slated as episode 6 for season 7, USS Calister Into Infinity. I will say that this is my least favorite episode of the season, but bear in mind, as I said, best season of the show, amazing season. I had loved every episode, and I thought every episode was great. So saying this is the least favorite is not saying it's a bad episode. I enjoyed it, maybe more than the first USS Calister, because I wasn't as big of a fan of the first one. I know a lot of people loved it and thought it was the best of season 4. I didn't hate it, I thought it was good, but I didn't think it was amazing. And a lot of Star Trek fans are particularly holding it up as a great sort of Star Trek analogy, but I don't actually think it is. it's because Charlie Brooker admitted that he doesn't really know anything about Star Trek. He was just using it as kind of a backdrop. And also, it could be interpreted in a certain way to be criticizing and putting down Star Trek fans, as opposed to something like Galaxy Quest, which praises and praises Star Trek fans and portrays them in a positive light. This because the one, the fan of the show was a Space Fleet, is a disturbed individual who is very socially awkward and fucked up and tortures people. So, and I think it feeds to that cliche of all Star Trek fans being like, fucked up individual or nerdy individuals or don't have a grasp on reality and think it's a real thing. Which again, Galaxy Quest did kind of play off of that too, but more of in a positive way. This was more of in a negative way, that he was a fucked up individual. So I never really liked it as a Star Trek analogy, and I think that it's I wouldn't compare it to, I wouldn't call it a Star Trek episode or anything like that. It's not even like, I don't think it's even a positive homage to Star Trek, but I'm not saying it's like terrible or that it treats Star Trek like shit. I'm just saying I don't look at it in terms of Star Trek. I look at it in terms of an actual episode. And yeah, the first one was good, but it was of course disturbing the way Black Mirror would be. But I think the second one was even better. I was more interested in the second one because it showed, and I think it was interesting showing what happened after the first one, that there wasn't the end of the story, that there was more story to tell, because that they're trapped. And in fact, I think some people pointed this out because they were trying to play off the end of the first episode as if it was a happy ending. And I think some people pointed out, like, they're in a game where all these players, the point of the game is to kill the other one. So they're going to be constantly, striving to stay alive, which is exactly what we see. And I think it's an interesting Black Mirror concept because it is sort of, a space opera way, but but of course they do it a way to make it true to Black Mirror, because it's not actually space, it's a game and it's a computer system. It also, of course, gets into the same thing that the first episode did about humanizing digital creatures. This is a constant theme throughout Black Mirror. Of course, in this season we get that with Hotel Reverie and Plaything, and this episode where it sort of treats artificial intelligence as alive and worthy of being respected for being alive. And so, yeah, I found this a particularly exciting episode. It was very interesting. I was very invested in it, with these, characters trying to stay alive and forming an alliance with the real life version of herself. And then you had the sort of boss guy, which I think it was funny. There's a lot of good humor in this episode too, but at the same time, it was still suspenseful and interesting and exciting. So all of that worked very well. You had the sleazy boss who was trying to cover up that he did something illegal and it could take him down, so that he was trying to kill the main characters in order to keep that covered up. And yeah, that's interesting in the way that the outside version of, what was her name, Nanette? That she was kind of playing him at first, but then was trying to stop him from killing them, and how she's like, these are real people, what the hell are you doing, you murderer? Like, again, getting into that, respecting these digital lives as real people. So yeah, it was really exciting. I think the final resolution was really interesting. I like how they brought back God, what the hell is that actor's name? Jesse Plemons. They brought back Jesse Plemons even though his character died in the first one because, yeah, I think it was interesting to bring him back as a younger version. I wonder if they did like de-aging thing because he looks more like he did in Breaking Bad. I wonder if they used footage from Breaking Bad to like de-age him. I'm sure they have this de-aging technology. And to make him a lot skinnier too, or maybe he actually did lose weight. I don't know, but yeah, so it was interesting bringing him back, and especially at the end where she had to confront him. And at first it seemed like, oh, everything's good. Oh yeah, he's just a funny nerdy guy. But then of course he's like, no, I'm gonna make a copy of you that I'm going to enslave and force to live with me. And she's like, no, we're not fucking doing that. And then he was doing his like powers, ripping her face off like he did in the first episode. So I love those twists. As I said, the whole thing was really exciting. And yeah, I think the final resolution makes it clear that this is going to be a trilogy, that they're going to need to do a third one to tie up exactly what's happening. Again, the fact that the real life Nanette got hit by a car very random. I literally like jumped like 2 feet in the air when that happened. I was like totally not expected. That is kind of the heavy hand of the plot, so that they could have it so digital Nanette could go into real life Nanette. And it did seem to kind of come out of nowhere, which it literally did. It did seem a lot of plot convenience, but for the most part, I'm willing to forgive it because it does make for a really interesting ending. How they have the ship is like stuck inside her head. Like I didn't know that's what was going to happen when he said, oh, I'm going to save everyone. I assumed like he would create the other universe for the everyone else, but let her go back in the body. But no, he did the weird shit. So yeah, I think they're going to need to do a third one to get them out of her head. And I'd be interested to see that because I think this has been a good series so far. Even though, it doesn't have that oomph as the previous episodes do, but it's still good. Still a good episode. As I said, every episode of the season was great. So my rating for USS Calister Into Infinity out of 10 is an 8. Extremely good. So, let's see. My rating for Black Mirror Season 7 as a whole is a 10, obviously. The best. As I said, it's my favorite season of the show. It's the best season of the show. Pleasantly surprised. Wasn't even thinking that this season would be nearly this good. In fact, I might go as far to say that so far this is my favorite season of the year, which is not what I was expecting. I thought clearly that would be Severance Season 2, and I thought, oh, nothing's going to dethrone Severance Season 2. Like, that was such an amazing season. But, the more I think about it, and I could change my mind, but the more I think about it, I think I give this season a slight edge. Just because there was a few nitpicks that I had about season 2 of Severance. I had that episode with what's her face, Miss Corbell, which was a total waste of an episode. It was bad pacing, and a couple of other moments where I think they couldn't handle that well. Whereas I think, this was like 6 amazing episodes. As I said, 3 of them which were some of the best moments of television I've ever seen. And the other 3 were also really great as well. So, I think I'm gonna have to say this is my favorite season of the year so far. It's an amazing season. I think the best of the show. So 10 out of 10. So that is it for my review of Black Mirror Season 7. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to check out my channel as I cover many other videos, mostly covering Star Trek. because currently covering Deep Space Nine and Voyager. So you can check out my channel for that and many other videos and many other shows as well. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.